Welcome back to the Smoke Pit. My name is Katie Torback. I am the president of 5051 Nuts. And the Smoke Pit is a concept within the military. It's a tradition that we sit next to the barracks and we all just kind of hang out in the smoke pit. Smokers smoke, drinkers drink, and we all just kind of talk and chat. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Brian?
My name is Brian. I am a software engineer by trade, a veteran, and now I'm a speaker and a writer for Mass 5051.
I'm Carl Abel, and I am the founder and CEO of Crambox Politics, a 20-year Marine Corps veteran located in North Carolina, so happy to be here.
My name's Nick Hensley. I was an infantryman for 20 years. I retired as the ops chief from a logistics base out here in Barstow, California, where I then got a federal job, which I had for about 3 years, and then I took the DRP and have been milking the GI Bill ever since.
So, before we hopped on, me and Nicholas were having a conversation, and I wanted to continue this conversation live because I thought it was interesting. Nicholas said that A, he voted for Trump, which I want to explore more about if he's happy now, and B, that he never voted on active duty. And so, Nicholas, can you explain, because I think Brian will find your philosophy behind this interesting.
I saw this program on George C. Marshall. What I really gleaned from the documentary about George C. Marshall was that he never voted while he was on active duty. And he did when he was Secretary of State, but his philosophy about it was don't vote for president because it doesn't matter. As long as you're in, whoever is the president, you're going to do what you're told. And that struck me. And the way that I kind of conceptualized being in the military anyway, that connected with me in a lasting way. It doesn't matter. You're going to do what they tell you to do, go where they tell you to go, and it doesn't matter the rhyme or reason, you're going to do it. It stuck with me, and it was just a weird thing I saw on the History Channel. Or I could have just been lazy, I don't know. But I think it was the George C. Marshall thing.
Fascinating that you saw something on the History Channel and that it dictated your life for 20 years. That's wild.
I ended up reading 2 biographies on him. I was on ship both times, but it was separate deployments on ship. And I ended up reading it and got a much more detailed perspective on who he was. And it was early in my career, so it kind of reinforced this bug in my head, and it made a whole lot of sense to me. So, I mean, I certainly didn't vote in state elections. I was in Hawaii or in Asia. So, I mean, I lost contact with everybody, I was married young, and my family came out to Hawaii, so that compounded that isolation. I really didn't need to know about the politics back home. I wasn't particularly politically aware at that point in time even, but I wouldn't have done it anyway. Even if I was in the mindset now where I enjoy politics enormously and I find it fascinating and think about it from what I've gathered, a very different way than everybody else. And it's kind of in a meshing of different ideas and ways to look at it, if that makes sense.
Brian, I would like your take on this.
I think that when you serve, it is important to participate and be aware of the political process because that is what you are doing. But I see that more as almost like a duty. Like it's a duty as a sort of engaged citizen to do that. However, there's a contrast here because one of the great freedoms of a free society is the freedom to not give a shit and not pay attention to politics. And actually, the life would be a lot better if we could go back to that world where it doesn't matter. I don't think we're in that world. I think we're in an existential world, and we're gonna have to drag everybody through the mud, kicking and screaming at some point. So that's what I would say about that.
I just find it fascinating because I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. Like the day I turned 18, my dad took me to register to vote, and I always at least voted in presidential elections.
Yeah.
And I understand your argument on not voting in local and state, right? But I even voted in local and state just because it was my hometown. I left when I was a kid, and so I still cared about what was going on in my hometown.
Sure. Fairness.
That's wild.
Yeah, in fairness, I knew that I would never go back to where I grew up. I knew that probably within the first 6 months of me I wasn't even in the fleet yet. I was still in the student pipeline. And I had made up my mind that I don't want to live anywhere with that much friggin' snow anymore.
That's fair. I live in Florida. I hate the snow. It snowed here this year. It made me very angry. So you did tell me that you voted for Trump.
I did.
And so how are you feeling about that? Are you happy? You still like happy with your vote? Or like
Well,
you
I'll tell you this.
concerned?
No, I knew what to expect. I knew it wasn't going to be, sunshine and roses. He is who he is. He communicates the way that he does, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of what I expected. I wouldn't say that there's been some missed opportunities for sure. And there's been some, I don't know. I understand the direction that we're going and why we're going in it. And it will matter later. And I believe that. I also don't automatically assume that what I'm seeing is necessarily the wrong thing to do. It's a matter of perspective, I think. And I'm like way zoomed out. I might have like some sort of, psychological condition or something, but I'm always way zoomed out. And I haven't seen anything where I was like, what did I do? That moment hasn't happened.
Can we explore some things here? Because like I told you, like I am a registered Republican. I believe in the tenets of the Republican Party, and that's why I refuse to switch my party. So from a policy perspective, the MAGA movement within the Republican Party does not align on a policy value with the tenets of the party.
Yeah,
And
no,
so
of
that's
course.
number one.
Yeah.
But I do want to, as veterans, right? This group, we are a nonpartisan group, which I told you, and we
Right.
focus on our oath to the Constitution. So I want to explore the Constitution with you because one of our calls to action of this group specifically is for veterans to honor their oath to the Constitution. And our oath to the Constitution was against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Hmm.
And it is, and I don't think it's your belief, but it's my belief that this administration, they are a threat to the Constitution of the United States. That's my utter belief. I believe that they are dismantling it. I believe that they are attacking civil liberties. They are melding the different branches of government, and like Congress is giving all of their power to the executive. I think that there's a lot of problems going on a constitutional basis. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about due process, right? Because that comes into the immigration issue. What do you think about ICE? Are you like a fan? Are you knowing what's going on in the streets?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm aware of what's going on with ICE, and I understand the controversy associated with it, and I understand the call for that it's some deviation from, constitutional law and the bypassing of Congress and specific to due process. I am of the opinion that due process is a right, but not everyone gets that right. Only we get that right.
May I ask you to define who is we?
American citizens.
I am going to direct you to a Supreme Court opinion that was given by Justice Scalia, who is one of the more conservative Supreme Court justices within the last 20 years on the court. And the Supreme Court decision was that due process was for all, and the we of the Constitution meant everybody within the borders of the United States, not just citizens.
That's insane.
Why?
Well, I think for a lot of reasons. I mean, if you look mathematically what the percentage of chance to be born here is, it's like, I think it's like 11%. And that's a thing that we should be very, very controlling of and protective of. And I think that when you incorporate everybody that's inside of such a gigantic space that is a liberal democracy, that has borders that are enormous, but everybody on those borders is very, very friendly by and large. And I understand that there are problems, but by and large, in comparison to Russia and Ukraine, we got friendly neighbors. So I think that the preservation of that is not only important now, but will become really, really important later. So I know that sounds like a word
Okay.
salad answer, but I think that just because one justice interprets something one
It wasn't one justice, it was the opinion of the court, which means it was the majority of the court. He wrote
sure,
the
sure.
opinion. There was a dissenting opinion to it, of course, because there's always the opinion and then the dissent.
Right,
I
right.
do want to explore that though, on because I got arrested overseas when I was active duty.
Shit.
So as an American, I was entitled to their constitutional law, right?
Yeah.
And where I was arrested, they have the same due process clause that we do. And so I got to go through their court system as an American citizen.
Yeah.
So don't you think that we should grant the same to people in our country, even people that are not here, like
No,
legally?
because you didn't go to
Is
where you went voluntarily. You were sent. You were part of an apparatus. You're part of a rules based order apparatus. There's in my opinion, I think that there's a difference between service members going someplace against their will, and certainly there are people who come here against their will. I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm not trying to imply that, but vice folks who come here in
okay, so
violation of law.
I'll take I'll take that the service member out of it. It's just a visiting citizen of ours on a vacation. They happen to cross a border unknowingly, and end up in a country undocumented, but that country gives them due process because it's within their constitution of that nation. And so, like, I am a constitutionalist, I'm a constitutional conservative.
Sure.
I I am of the opinion that due process is for all, and it's not an opinion; it's a fact due to the Supreme Court case that we, the people, is everybody within the border of the United States, and unless that's to be changed through another court opinion, as it stands, due process is for everybody within our borders. But go
Yeah.
ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so there's sort of a practical reason why due process is done the way it's done, why it's just anybody within the borders. Specifically because you actually need a process to determine whether someone is a citizen or not. Citizenship is actually complicated. Many people don't even have access to their birth certificates because like the building burns down or something and they got to find it. Most of us don't have documentations. We're not a show your papers country. It's kind of presumed, essentially, citizenship at some level. And so the reason
That's
you
a
do
good
that is say,
point.
okay, well, first we have to determine if this individual is a citizen. And you do that through a court process where a lawyer can review it and make sure they're not getting screwed over by the government. And that's sort of why they do it that way. It just has to be, because otherwise what you're going to have is you're going to have the government saying, well, they're not a citizen. But what happens when there's a dispute and the family says they are a citizen? Well, now you have to come to a heads. And the court is fundamentally an adversarial process for resolving those differences. And essentially all liberal nations operate by the same principle
Sure.
with some wiggle room depending on
Has
kind
there
of
been
how
a lot
their founding
and
documents are formed. But even we don't. I mean, even we don't do due process perfectly, right? It's a thing we want to attain. We want to have more due process because it's generally better for get better outcomes.
perhaps I'm ignorant to it. Has there been a lot of cases of that since the administration changed? Has there been a lot of cases of American citizens deported?
Yes.
Holy shit, how many?
So I won't say citizens. I will say this. It depends on how you look at it. Because if you look at birthright citizenship, right? You have moms who are undocumented, but then you have children, and I'm not talking small children. I'm talking, like 10, 11, 12 teenagers
Mhm.
that exist in this country and their parents are deported. Where is that child going to stay? That child also is deported.
Stays with the parents.
You see what I'm saying? And so, yes, there are instances in that. I did see, and I haven't looked into this case, and it might be a really good reason, but I did see on the news today, somewhere in the country, that someone's citizenship was stripped and they were deported, and it was for a crime. 100%, it was for a crime. And so I'm kind of interested in that case of like, what is the, line that we remove
Sure.
citizenship from. Um,
That could even turn into the like predictive model of how those kind of cases operate too. When it's one of those new things, the kind of first time it happens, it's interesting to see how things um, evolve in that way. And, who knows how it's gonna turn out. Generally, I think I'll dance on the minefield. I'm okay with the DHS actions, the ICE actions, the deportations. I'm okay with it. I recognize that it doesn't touch any part of my life, and if it did, I would feel differently. I think it's staring at a tree when we need to be looking at a forest. I think that there are more upsides to it than downsides. And I think if you only focus on the negative, bad aspects of it, it can give you significant tunnel vision. And I try not to do that. I recognize bad things happen. Bad things happen all the time. Mistakes will be made. Missteps will be had. But generally, not like full throated, like deport them all type guy, but at the same time, let these folks do their job. They got a lot of intelligence gathering done that they weren't able to act on for a long time. And we need to assume that the people who are doing this are just as smart as us.
All right, so start off with the fact that being in the United States without documentation is not a crime. The fact that crossing the border at a place that is not prescribed, at a time that is not prescribed, and in a manner that is not prescribed by the United States government is a crime. However, just being in the United States without documentation is not proof that you did those things and you violated that law. So that's first and foremost. Second,
Well, how'd you get
without
in
due
there?
process, like Brian said,
Let him finish.
as Brian said, the due process is to determine whether or not you came in without the correct legal means, one, and two, to determine if you are a citizen or not. And just summarily picking people up off the streets and throwing them into a detention center and then flying them away without due process is a violation of that process, and it hurts and creates a scenario in which citizens can and have been wrongfully deported to countries that they shouldn't be deported to. But more importantly here, right? Like you said, it doesn't affect me, but if it did affect me, I might feel differently. Well, why don't you feel differently about it, despite the fact that it doesn't affect you, right? Like there were plenty of Germans during freaking Nazi Germany with the rise of Hitler that pulled it doesn't affect me, so I don't care about it. And then all of a sudden, guess what? It did affect them, right? So it takes the citizenry, the population of the United States to step up and say, listen, we're not going to stand for this. The problem is not, they've had all of this intel and they haven't been able to act on it. Because if that was the case, then we would see a rise in ICE deportations over the Biden and Obama eras. Fact of the matter is, we haven't seen that rise. In fact, Obama deported more than Trump has so far in both of his terms combined. So if that was the case, then you would have a valid argument, you'd be able to see that trend line. The reality is that the problem that a lot of us are having with what ICE is doing is not the fact that they're deporting undocumented immigrants. It's the fact that they are doing it with such violence and ferocity and treating American citizens on the streets as if they are active insurgents. And you can see it every single time there's an ICE encounter. So that's the problem that we have. And so I go back to, if you know that you would have a problem with it if it affected you directly, and you would then react in a different way, why aren't you reacting that way now?
I want to tag something on to that is, hey, we had an ROE. I'm also a combat vet. We had an ROE and DHS agents lack training.
Mm-hmm.
But here's
For
my
sure.
thing on it doesn't affect me, right? Like it doesn't affect me either, but I am out documenting human beings being kidnapped by the federal government. I do that as their families deserve to know because I'm here for let's get the criminals, let's get the worst of the worst. Everybody, both sides of the aisle is for that. But that is not what's happening across the country. I work in construction in my day job. Okay.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I'm a project manager.
Right on.
I have to use E-Verify because I build schools. And so I use tax money. I have to make sure that these people are legal in the country to work.
Mm-hmm.
Since I finished my last high school, multiple people from that project have been deported from this country.
That's terrible.
They were here legally. to work. One of the bigger things
Yeah.
I see as a veteran, besides my oath to the Constitution, is our brothers and sisters are being deported. 96,000 veterans have been deported since Vietnam.
Since Vietnam. Okay.
And we are talking, we're talking Purple Heart recipients, Silver Star recipients. We are talking about people that bled for this country. And I have a severe issue with that. But I also have an issue with the fucking grass guy that got pulled over because he's brown, and then ICE picks him up and deports him. Like, I have a severe issue with that. That is not what this country is about.
Sure.
And when I see ICE agents as jump out fucking boys in Jacksonville, Florida, in the same tactical gear I wore in Afghanistan in the streets of this country, I have a severe issue with that. We do not treat people in this country like insurgents. This is not an insurgency. This is not a fucking invasion. And the people that they're capturing are not fucking criminals. 70% of them have zero criminal record. Zero. Zero. So what are we accomplishing besides terrorizing our own fucking communities? What power? It's about power.
I have a comment, but I actually want Nicholas to have a chance to have his say before I go.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Well, no.
Because we done a lot.
I mean,
a lot to process here.
Yeah, but if I felt that way, I won't say what I would do because we're live on the internet, but I would feel very, very upset about it. And I would do a lot about it. And that's justified. And the way that you explained it, recognize how angry, if I perceived it that way, I'd be. And I think that is a valid stance to take. And I don't think that you're necessarily wrong or anything. If I had that perspective, I'd have problems right now. Thank you, Brian. And that's a great point.
Yep. No problem.
Great points.
So I kind of want to take a different angle of attack here. So I don't focus much on policy. I'm a right-center Republican, kind of a libertarian thinking guy, socially liberal, fiscally conservative. Is kind of how I think about the world. Me and KT, people like us in the movement, are pretty rare, but we do exist.
Yeah, you're a Massachusetts Republican. I'm a California, Massachusetts Republican.
Sure. Rockefeller Republican, with the reform wing of the Republican Party that used to be a thing. And so like when you talk about things like border security and whether we should be deporting illegal aliens, I do think that people who are here illegally should be deported. And I'll have some disagreements with my new allies on this. That's fine, right? Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to protect the Constitution. And if there's a process and it's done legally, that isn't a problem. But the way I look at this administration is I do not look at this as a policy question, because I don't believe the administration operates in good faith. And when you bad faith changes everything, right?
Sure.
So, for example, there were 400,000 people here who were here legally, who were refugees from Haiti and a couple other countries because they had earthquakes and a couple disasters, and we brought people in through a legal kind of approved process and brought them on board. The problem is all the power to decide that status is decided at the executive level. And so what they did is they said, well, we don't want these people here because Biden did it, and so what we're going to do is we're going to revoke all their status. We're going to send back 400,000 people to their countries, and these people are in the country. He actually created illegal immigrants because they were here legally, and then he made them illegal. This has happened multiple times. They'll get somebody, and it turns out he's a resident, but they need to hit their quota, and so what they'll do is they'll take the legal residency away. Oh, you're here illegally, right? And so it's this kind of this bureaucratic sort of maliciousness kind of at the edge cases here, where you have people who are here legally, who have done all the right things, and then we end up kicking them out anyways in kind of this rancid way because of what they're trying to do.
Sure.
So there's a friend of mine, you might get a chance to meet him. His name is John Moses. He runs a group called Mass Afghan, so it's a charity. He's an Army sergeant. He was, I think he was an 88 Mike. He was a truck driver. Got out a platoon sergeant. He got out in 2018 or 2019. When he got back, he was really concerned about SIVs, which were the special immigrant visas for a whole bunch of Afghanistan families, or a whole bunch of Afghanistan, people like translators, like people who helped us overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the Biden administration's greatest failures was abandoning these people, right? He was furious. And so what he did is he started charity. He raised $30,000. He chartered a plane, and he went over there himself, and he got 65 families. Okay, so we're talking 200 people, and he got them settled in Massachusetts. Okay,
Yeah.
Those people, okay, are now terrified, because if they go back, if they are deported, and they could be deported even though they're here legally, if they are deported, the Taliban will kill them.
Yes, 100%.
This veteran's life's work is on the line. He dedicated his life to this. And this is the kind of stuff that is happening here because of like the lawfare that's going on and where the lines of scrimmage are, right? It's part of the reason why we do what we do, and we stand out in the street and be obnoxious and scream and yell and call people names. Like the reason we're doing that is because we're trying to draw attention to these injustices that are happening at scale, and there is no like backstop because he's overriding the Constitution essentially every chance he gets. And he's looking for excuses and edge cases and loopholes because that's what he's done his whole career, right? So I don't look at this as left and right. I look at this as just like as fundamental amorality now percolating throughout the highest levels of our government. And I think the only way to fight that is opposition. So I make friends with whoever I can.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting.
You guys are making some solid points. I am still in the Uber en route from RDU, but as soon as I get to my little office, I'm gonna get set up and weigh in on this. And Nick, I really appreciate Nicholas, and I don't want to shorten it up without asking, but I do really appreciate
Hensley.
the angle that you're taking. Hensley, okay, right on, dude. Yep. But no, I appreciate the angle that you're taking from this and kind of just hearing folks out. And I think great points have been made around the table. I really appreciate listening, so I'm just gonna continue to do that quietly.
Right on.
Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, so I got a little heated because this is one of those situations that I get very passionate about this stuff. But the thing to really call out here, right, is that the argument is not about, like everyone else has pointed out, the argument is not about whether or not we should be deporting illegal immigrants, folks that are here without the legal authority to be here. I made the comment about how being here undocumented is not proof that you entered illegally. And the question that was retorted is, well, where did they come from? Well, there's a lot of visa overstays that happen quite frequently. And that is a violation of their allowance to be here and their permission to be here. But even visas we've seen get turned into a tool by which to meter First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, right? If you're here on a visa and you speak out against the government, all of a sudden your visa's gone because you shouldn't be allowed to speak out against the government. Okay, well that's a topic that maybe we can discuss, but at the end of the day, the problem is that it's not the what we are doing, it's the how we are doing it, right? The reason that I bring that up is because when you sit here and you look at the incident with Renee Good, the incident with Alex Preddy, the very first thing that these individuals, that the ICE officers did was immediately respond with lethal force. In a combat zone, we are required to do escalation of force. That's part of the rules of engagement. You didn't just get to go shoot anyone on the streets. You had to have PID, right? If they had a gun and they were aiming it at you, then you could shoot and kill them. But you couldn't just shoot and kill them because they were running out and yelling at you, right? Like that's not how that worked. There is and was an escalation of force process. And then you also have members of the leadership team testifying before Congress, directly calling verbatim individuals and protesters who are out there protesting against ICE, calling them an insurgency, literally verbatim, right? Like if you watch these testimonies, you can see this happening. The folks that are currently running CBP and ICE, the folks that are currently on the streets for ICE and CBP are all engaged in what they view as an us versus them mentality. It's no longer a government doing the job that they're supposed to do. It's the government is going out and they are taking a more aggressive, more violent approach to how they interact with U.S. citizens. And U.S. citizens are the ones that are coming back and saying, listen, we don't agree with what you're doing, right? No matter which way you put it, the shooting of Renee Good was not a clean kill, right? The shooting of Alex Preddy was not a clean kill. There was no justification for that level of violence, for that level of force. And there's videos of multiple angles that allow us to make that decision and that judgment call from where we stand. And yet the leadership of DHS came out and called both of them terrorists, domestic terrorists. So at the end of the day,
former leader,
the issue that I have, right, the issue that I have is that, we have this going on. And I guess for me, my problem is that you led with, if this were to directly affect me, I would feel differently. Well, it's not directly affecting me, and I deplore what is going on. So I go back to why do you still have that? Why does it have to be something that directly affects you for you to stand against it?
Well, I think that's a fascinating question, and I think we talked about that was a very good question, but we also talked about we talked about this briefly on our Crayon Box episode. We're at a point in time where a thoughtful, rational human being can see the same thing and have a different view of what happened. They can have a very different perception of what happened. And we have a familiarity with killing that is different from everybody else's perspective. So for me to say that these given agents acted in real time in a manner that I don't approve of, or that maybe I would have behaved differently. You can't know that. And I'm skeptical to criticize those kind of decisions because I've seen them go the wrong way. Remember when the Sniper P video, and before anybody even had a chance to have any kind of you know response, the pilot commandant, I think it was Amos, yeah, the pilot commandant, he just said crush them. Doesn't matter. And that had an effect because I knew a lot of those guys. It was like, no, man, this is messed up. So I would hate to do that. Now, having said all that, if I believed that it was deliberate, if I believed it was a bad kill, if I believed that it was, some part of some sort of other overarching evil thing that was happening, I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed. And Carl, I know you get heated,
So,
bro. No worries.
so I'm going to ask you some questions then, because you said ask you a very direct question. Do you think that the murder, because I believe both Alex Preddy and Renee Good were murdered, do you believe that they were good shoots?
I don't know. I don't know
So
if it.
can I give you a little bit? So there was multiple people holding Alex Preddy to the ground, and
Mhm.
they shot him in the back.
Hmm.
Honorable? Is that an honorable kill? To shoot someone in the back while other men are holding someone down? Is that something that you think? I mean, let's be real here. We're in the military. I know we have civilians watching, but we're going to be fucking real. The military is brutal at times, and we do a lot of stupid shit that we shouldn't. Or Abu Ghraib wouldn't have happened.
Oh,
Some of the torture and deaths of civilians and shit like that, right? And that shit happens within the military because we don't hold our own accountable. So I'm going to ask you again, do you think holding individuals down, multiple people holding an individual down, and someone shooting him in the back is a justified kill, moral?
I don't know. I guess I don't have those parts. I don't think about it that way.
Okay, so you're a maybe. Carl, with those facts, individuals holding somebody in the ground, shooting them in the back, justified? Brian,
No, no, it is.
Rory, justified?
If he was reaching for his gun that they had already disarmed him of, then maybe. But
Mm.
he was unarmed and on the ground, on his knees, with essentially a barrel to the back of his head, put down like a dog, much like Christy Nome did hers. And it wasn't just Christy Nome that called them terrorists. Mastermind of it all also, Stephen Miller did as well. So let's not forget that. He's still in charge as well.
So Rory, justified? No.
Fuck no.
That's that's one of the conversations within this community, right? Like that I find unique is that four vets are saying, that's not really a justified killing. And you're saying, I just don't know. But the problem is if we don't hold people accountable and we don't call it out and we're not like, that is not a justified kill. That is unjustified. We don't murder people in the streets. We don't murder civilians. We don't do that here. Until we start doing that loudly and very clearly, I feel like the escalation of ICE is going to continue and more civilians are going to be harmed.
I mean, according to Trump, they're going to be in every airport come Monday.
Yeah, I was going to get into that.
Sorry.
Yeah, that we're going to You're into that after I get Mayhem's justified or unjustified killing mayhem of Alex Preddy.
Yeah, I mean, fucking horse shit. Bad kill, right? He's a nurse. Doesn't matter if he's armed. This is the United States. It's very obvious what's going on in those situations. And the fact of the matter is, putting assault rifles in the hands of poorly trained individuals against American citizens is a fucking bad idea. It always has been, right? And so the idea that we've got people out here, right? And you guys know my stance on this shit, right? I mean, I fucking read this thing and I believe in it and I fought for it for 20 fucking years, right? So you're not going to come out here and just throw the Constitution down the tubes because you're a 79-year-old piece of shit, right? You don't get to do that. I don't give a fuck about anything to do with anybody's political leanings whatsoever. But if you want to come out here and gun down somebody who works for an organization that I deeply respect, the VA, who is making fucking miracles with the little that they're given, is absurd. It's completely absurd. What they need to start doing is following procedure and the Constitution, or they're going to find themselves in the same situation as some of the forces did with the French Resistance. We the people can become we, O-U-I, real fucking fast. But yeah, I mean, I'm deeply frustrated about all this stuff, and also, like, these fucking fat, useless turds, right, running around violating the Constitution, our Constitution, with little to no training, right? I've watched these guys respond to crowds, respond to protests. They have no training.
47 days. 47 days of training.
Well,
47.
And here's the truth of the matter, right? I've trained people in fucking probably 15 countries across this globe. What I've witnessed, specifically, I remember one where the protesters had come around the front of that ICE facility, right? And they were being peppered and all this stuff. But watching those agents, and I use that term fucking loosely, watching those agents come out there and just fucking, like somebody had a light in their face, it was very obvious to me, and anybody with any amount of training, they had no idea what the fuck they were doing or how to manage that situation.
Also, Nicholas, I'm going to ask you a question because I feel like everybody else on the call probably knows the answer to this.
Sure.
How much do ICE agents make to terrorize U.S. citizens?
They're making depending on locality, pay, and all that kind of stuff. They're making between 30 and like max like 98.
I've seen it as high as 86. And we put it in our group when we found it and we were talking about it. Because one of the problems I have with these people making $86,000 is, do you know how much the sergeant major of the Army makes?
No.
Not much more. Not much more. And so when you have ICE agents making money comparable to the sergeant major of the Army, I have an extreme problem with that. I also have an extreme problem with the domestic force having just as much money as our military.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too is because they top them off with like bonus pay and things like that, and part of the reason they're doing that, by the way, is because they're having a hard time recruiting because of all like the bad press and all the things that's happening, and so they're actually having a hard time even getting people to get in the door because nobody wants to do it, and so you got to pay more. I will note that they didn't have this problem during the Biden administration when we were deporting at about the same rate, and they were just wearing blazers because you send two people with a subpoena in blazers, they can apprehend the individual they need to apprehend and they move on. What's going on now is they're going in with like whole squads so they can do crowd control and all this other stuff, all this kind of overhead that they need to get out there because they're out in there in this scary gear and they're scaring the shit out of people. And so what's happening is you see these guys with guns driving around the city, just natural human curiosity maybe. You'd walk over to see what the hell was going on. And eventually it just turns into flash mobs every time they stop. Right? And then, of course, you have movement actors as well who know where these guys are. And every time they show up in number, we're part of Whisper Networks, all of us, right? And that information flows out there. And then we got 100 people there with phones. And we do that on purpose. It's because we know they're probably going to violate the Constitution. So we keep a record of it because there will be an accounting after this administration. And we need to have all that data gathered and collected and ready, and so that's what we're doing, and we don't want to do it. I have way better things I could be doing with my time. I wanted to start a business, and now I'm doing this, right? But when you think the Constitution's at risk, you act accordingly, and so I'm acting accordingly.
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, the shit with ICE, it disgusts me at the most basic level. Because instead of changing their tactics, right, which are very obviously what the fuck we have a problem with in this country, right? It's not deporting people that don't belong here. That's never been a fucking issue. The issue is you're doing it like a bunch of fucking assholes. You're abusing people. You're murdering people. You're disappearing people. You're doing shit that is outside of the fucking bounds.
Nicholas, here's another problem I have, right? And this is something that I find utterly just deplorable. Like, my grandfather liberated Dachau, and my father was in Vietnam, so I'm like a generational veteran. I'm the fifth generation. My grandfather told us very minimal about Dachau, but I did a shit ton of research into it, right? And so I have a problem when videos come out, like one came out, and I reposted it on our TikTok today, of Baker County Detention Facility, which is very close to me, and it's deplorable.
It's a
I
death
have
camp?
problems when we have, yes, they like are not they don't have running water, they don't have lights, like people are dying in these
Okay, but they're not
places in
like
mass.
they're not like fucking.
Yeah,
There's no
you haven't started gassing
crematoriums
yet.
or yeah. There's no yeah.
Not that we know
Holy
of.
shit. Yeah.
Not
Good
that
lord.
but here's a bigger issue though, right? Is like, fuck the crematoriums, right? Like, because that, like, they're not going to do that because that's already been done. Okay, like, they're not going to do that. I don't think they're that dumb. Alligator Alcatraz, when they shut it down, 170 people went missing and have never been found.
That's interesting.
I
Odd.
actually didn't know that.
I had no
I
idea.
live here.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that one, Alligator Alcatraz, is run by the state of Florida. It's not run by the federal government. The bigger problem is like up north, right? And I don't remember what city. I think it could have been Illinois. Might be wrong. Like, as a state, it might have been it might have been Massachusetts, Brian. The disabled blind man they let out in the middle of the
Yeah,
night.
they let him out. They let him out like 5 miles from where he was. He was a citizen. He was blind and didn't speak English.
He
They
died.
detained him for like 3 weeks, and then they dropped him off 5 miles from, or a couple miles from where they picked him up, and he died in the cold.
I think it was Buffalo or Rochester, and yeah, they dropped him outside of a Tim Hortons that was locked.
I've heard stories like that, by the way. So I'm friends with a couple immigration attorneys around here. I've heard stories about them doing this. Like they'll capture somebody, they'll figure out that they're a citizen or whatever, and then they will like leave them at another random location. In one case, they flew them down to Texas and just left them there, just kicked them out the door, no money, no phone, and then like at some
It's
level,
really bad at the Whipple building.
yeah.
They're letting. I have connections there. It's really bad outside of the Whipple building to the point that they're letting people just go in the middle of the night into the cold with no shit for the cold or call anyone or anything. As well as they're taking DNA swabs as well.
There's been multiple disabled people just kind of released and then they died. There's the video of the teenager they kidnapped from, I believe it was a Target. He was a teenager, kidnapped him in a uniform, figured out he was a citizen, and dropped him off at a Target or at a Walmart. Kicked him out, beat the shit out of him, kicked him out.
Something like that happened here in NC also. They picked him up he was 18, picked him up from a construction site that he was working at, drove like 4 miles down the road, realized he was a citizen, kicked him out of the fucking vehicle along with his shit and threw his shit.
Wow.
I have a problem with that.
So yeah, just the details on that man. He was a Rohingya refugee from Myanmar, didn't speak English. He was 56 years old. He was in custody, released after it was determined that he could not be deported. This one was a border patrol situation, and they dropped him off at a coffee shop in Buffalo, New York, that was miles from his home. His family and lawyer were not notified. He went missing and then was later found dead in the city of Buffalo. So, I mean, it doesn't really change the outcome. It doesn't change the situation. But all of these stories, Nick, go to what I keep saying is the how, right? Like it's the way that they are comporting themselves. And you and I have conversations all the time. I mean, Donald Trump's reaction to the death of Robert Mueller, you and I had this conversation offline about how, Donald Trump is not presidential. He's not behaving in a manner that is expected of a statesman. but neither are. And what I say is the way that he acts is being reflected by the way that his government and his government officials are acting, right? So if the president doesn't comport himself in a manner that is respectful and is statesmanly, then his people are not going to comport themselves in a manner that is respectful and statesmanly, right? So you're going to wind up with ICE officers who are going to go out into the public and they're going to be highly aggressive. You're going to wind up with CBP who goes out into the public and they're going to be highly aggressive. And they're going to act and behave in a manner that is above the law because they think that they're above the law. They're going to act and behave in a manner that is against or in violation of the Constitution because, well, the Constitution doesn't apply to them, because if it doesn't apply to the president, then there's no reason that it should apply to them either, right? And so, I mean, that is the trickle-down effect of having a leader who comports themselves in the manner that Donald Trump is comporting himself, right? So at the end of the day, what we have to do is, and what I keep pushing is, we've got to understand the situation and look at it from a systems side, understand the reasoning behind it, and figure out how we can fix it so this never happens again.
I just wanted to say too, like, the way I think about this is I think a lot about psychology. So I have a really just kind of a macabre interest in like sociopathy and sort of how it functions in the brain, and not only that, how it functions in society. And I don't think a lot of people understand this, and so like what's happening here is kind of getting lost in like the fight over like the policy and like immigration legal versus not, and like we're sort of missing the picture here. What you have right now in the president of the United States is an extremely powerful man who has all of the signs of narcissistic sociopathy. Now, when you have an individual with narcissistic sociopathy in a position of high power, and by the way, this happens on the left and on the right, so this is Stalin, this is the same thing, this is not an ideology thing. What they do is they use essentially any vector to try and get what they want. And not only that, people, because they have like sociopaths have a superficial charm, people think, oh, he's just funny, oh, he's just charming, it's just a joke, like, and they just kind of dismiss it. But other people who are sociopaths can pick up on that wavelength, and then they gravitate to him, right? And that is what he has built in the government in this second term. Now, in the first term, he was surrounded by a whole bunch of very conservative people who also had, dignity and duty and rule of law and all these types of things as like their central governing ethos. And many of them joined the administration to say, well, okay, he's a little bit of a lunatic, but we'll make sure that there's guardrails and he doesn't blow anything up. That largely worked. However, he has now destroyed his relationship with all those people, kicked them all out of the Republican Party. Okay, to the point where those folk are now joining the Democratic Party. This is George Conway, who is a conservative with the Federalist Society. He's now running as a Democrat in New York. This is Jeff Flake, John McCain, go down the list. There's like thousands of Republican intellectuals and leaders who have left the Republican Party over various kind of insults and are now in a place of opposition. And the reason they are doing that is because this guy has gravitated all of these kind of lunatics and boobs and weirdos around him and filled his government with them. And so now what we have is we have a government not rule of law, but rule of what we can get away with. And they're attacking essentially every single vector that limits their power, and they are not doing it because they care about it. Like, Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about immigration, right? He's doing it because he's trying to pick the least sympathetic enemy that he can target, that he can use to divide people. Oh, it happens that a lot of people in his opposition happen to be have immigrants in their households. And so they might be less willing to oppose because he's going to target them. This is why they're targeting the trans community. Right? They're going after him because they're a small minority group that can't protect themselves, and because those individuals are activated against him for different reasons. And he's going down the list. This is why we're in war in Iran right now. He doesn't care about security or Iran having a nuclear weapon. He is doing it because the Iranian regime and the Ayatollah is an asshole. Nobody here is their friend, but it's a nice target for him to distract from the fact that his presidency is failing. Right? And we're going to see this again and again and again. And so, Nicholas, what I'd like you to look for is to see more things that he does in the future. Right, to kind of test my theory. And when you start cringing your head and you see him do that one thing, it's like, why did he do that? Well, the reason he did that is because, whatever evil thing he's doing is not because there's a smart reason at the end of it. It's actually because of the evil thing. I do believe this man is fundamentally evil, and it is not a question of where your policy positions are. And there have been left-wing versions of this in the past, and we just happen to have this particular variant.
I also want to bring up the one in the thing in the comment too is, a lot of this is a distraction from the Epstein files. I don't care who the fuck you are. Like, we all should want every name to be released and every single one of those human beings to be held accountable, no matter political ideology, no matter how much money they have, no matter what they do, no matter what you like. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. They should all be held accountable.
That was quite a bit to unpack, and also all brilliant. It's exciting to be able to talk with people who look at things as intensely as I do. But I would say that a lot of the things that you guys feel, and I'm not invalidating any of them or the way that you guys think, two things I think assumes that the people who don't agree with you, and let's say that I do, but you're assuming that the people that don't agree with you are not as smart as you are. They're the only reason why America hasn't done what they should have done or something like that is because there are too many people who haven't woken up. There are too many people who are ignorant. There are too many people who just don't know. But you should assume that not that. You should assume that these people think differently than me. These people see the same set of conditions that you guys see in a different way. Now, speaking to the evilness of people, and one thing I've got to say, the more we talk about the political discord in America relating to the 1930s in Europe, the more we lessen and cheapen what happened in the 1930s and the 1940s in Europe and Asia. And that is natural for us because our sacrifice in comparison was limited. But if you were to say to any Russian, do you think Trump is like a Nazi? They'd laugh at you. If you were to say that to any person in China, do you think that Trump is like Tojo and Hirohito? They would laugh at you. And it lessens how bad and how evil those things really, really were.
I'm gonna call bullshit on that
Well,
point because I don't really give a fuck what the Russians think or the Chinese. I do care about what our European allies and NATO allies think of us and what they say about us in the European Parliament and in the UN because they have held our alliance since World War II, where we fought the Nazis because of fascism. And multiple leaders within the European Union and within the European Parliament have called what is happening in this country fascism. And so the parallel is not to Nazis, it's to fascism as an ideology. And when people say that it cheapens what happened, no, because I'm going to call total fucking bullshit on that.
I'll agree with Nicholas, but I'll agree in the way that might, sure, but it's because it makes it a not American problem. We didn't deal with them here on American soil. So calling him a Nazi makes it not necessarily connected to America problem. He's much more like Jim Crow era and the slave hunters, because that's what ICE really is, let's be honest. But that is what I will say on that point of things is you're right. It isn't necessarily directly, he isn't directly a Nazi, but we need to get rid of the system that allowed fascism to rise in America. And until then, nothing will change.
I do want to point out the historical point that the Nazis based their policy off of Jim Crow laws within this country. And so it's not a rise of Nazism, it is a re-rise of white supremacy in this country that was never dealt with after the Civil War. And so people that are history buffs know that. And so, like, I understand what you're saying about the Nazis, Nicholas, and I'm sure like there are some people that believe like you, and that's cool. I'm here for it, right? But I want to go back to your point of people seeing like seeing the same thing and then like thinking about it completely differently. I think that there is a major problem with media literacy in this country. I think that there is a major problem when we did away with the Fairness Act in this country and the news could lie to you and it became entertainment and not news. Because when you have both sides, right? Like all news organizations, not alt news, but large media corporations, both sides. spin the news. It is not, just here's the facts, you figure
Oh,
out
it's
whatever the fuck
cheerleading.
you want. And
It's cheerleading, 100%.
and
100%.
so both sides do this.
Yes.
But the problem is, right, is now we're at a point, and this happened in a disagreement I had with somebody, is we were talking, it was when SNAP benefits went away.
Mhm.
And we were talking about different statistics. And we pulled two separate statistics from two very reputable sources that were very different, that were
Yeah.
gauging the same thing. And so it's not that we are living, like we're looking at something and we're thinking about it differently. We are living in alternate fucking realities of information that we are garnering, and it is depending upon where you are getting your information from and whether you know how to gauge whether something is factual and whether it
Mhm.
is cited and it is information or it is somebody's opinion. And
Right.
so when you start to look into a lot of these issues, because I will tell you, some of the talking points you made are like right wing talking points that I made throughout my life as well. And then when I looked at the actual statistics, I was somewhat surprised. And one I will tell you, as a veteran, I was very surprised about is one of the reasons, young PFC Katie, specialist Katie, voted Republican is because my senior leadership told me that Republicans funded the military better, and they do. They fund active duty better through policy. But what they don't tell you as a veteran is that the Democrats are the ones that are out there fighting for your VA benefits. And so, like, you have this vastly different thing because as a veteran, you want better benefits, right? Like, we want better educational benefits, we want better housing benefits, we want better disability benefits, better health care. And Democrats do that. So I think the bigger issue is information literacy in this country and doing the research for yourself and then gaining your own information and opinion on it.
So you made a good point about how when we talk to individuals who have an opposing view, sometimes we tend to be condescending. Valid point. And that we assume that they are not as plugged in or not as attuned to things as we are. And there's a reason for that, right? And the reason is that the alternative is worse, right? If we allow ourselves to assume that the person that we're talking to just doesn't have the connections that we do or it isn't following the topics in the same manner, then that allows us to approach it from a point of view of we're just trying to have an open communication line where we're informing them of the things that we are aware of.
Mhm.
Whereas if we come to it from a point of view of they are as informed as we are, what that creates is the assumption that the person that we're talking to knows what's going on and is completely okay with it, which is a much worse situation than doesn't know what is going on and only knows what they've been told. Right. So
Right.
that's why we approach it that way, because we don't want to think the worst about people. We want to think the best about people. We don't want to think that people are diametrically, that people exist in the United States who are absolutely racist, who are absolutely on the same evil level as the guy that is actually running the White House, Miller, right? Like, in to the point of Donald Trump, like, I don't think Donald Trump is running the Oval Office. I don't think that he's running the show. I think that he is just out there and gets put out there as a doddering fool because everyone likes him. And that there is a cabal of folks who are running behind the scenes, like Miller, right? Penis head Miller, who are actively engaged in trying to subvert and overturn the democratic norms that we have here in this country. So, but that's from my perspective, and that's from my understanding of the situation. So when
Right.
I approach it and I approach someone who has an opposing view, I approach them as they're just not as well informed because I don't want to think the worst.
All right, so I did want to comment on the comparing Trump to Nazi bit. It's a useful bit of rhetoric. I happen to believe it, but not because they have done things as bad as the Nazis
Right.
yet, right? The Nazis were essentially clowns in 1939, right? And the things got more insane and more cruel as time went on, and we didn't get the final solution until like a year and a half before the very,
43.
very end. Now, I don't think it
43.
gets there. I don't think it gets the 43. So here's the thing. I don't think it gets there here just because there's too many cameras. And it was the cameras that did the Nazis in, because once we figured out what was going on, like, we're like, okay, firebomb Dresden, it's the right thing to do. Right?
Mhm.
At that point, the gloves were off because we knew what they were up to, right? We didn't want to do it before. There was this huge debate about whether we even should do aerial bombing because of the ethics of it, and then we decided to do it once we figured out what the hell they were really up to. But at the same time, I think the psychology of it is still there. You got the cult of personality, you got the centralized kind of figure, you have a kind of a supine Congress, you have a court system that seems to be holding, but there's cracks there, and it doesn't seem to be quite restraining it as effectively as it could be. You have the weaponized Justice Department going after political enemies. The President of the United States has said on live television that, or he has tweeted or truthed, right, that, the 6 Democrats who are veterans who talked about, respecting your oath and not following illegal orders should be tried and executed for treason.
Mhm.
I would say that. Should I be executed for treason? And they're already calling us terrorists. Like when Donald Trump says, oh, those radical leftist terrorists, the people in this room that you're talking to right now, that's who he's talking about. We're terrorists in his eyes, right? Now, I haven't done anything illegal. All I do is stand out in a field and hold a sign. I sometimes make a speech, right? Write an article, right? It's like, this is the epitome of like free speech. What you should be doing in a free society is speaking your mind.
Mhm.
We're terrorists. The psychology is already here, and this guy does not have a way to get off this train, because as soon as he loses, there's going to be nothing but prosecutions of him, probably the entire administration. And it's probably going to go 3 levels down, right? And we're going to have a decade of these fucking trials when this is over, because there is so much evidence of law breaking that is being gathered in many cases by citizens completely independent of the legal system, because we know we're going to need that accountability when this is over. And that's where we are. That's kind of how we approach this. And so it seems like intense, and it scares the fuck out of people. Like my brother was a 3-time Trump voter. It scares the shit out of him what I'm up to, right? Because I told him flat out, I was like, listen, Dave, at this point in life, I need to divide my friends between the people who would help me hide Anne Frank in the basement and the people who would not. That is how I look at this, because of where we are, because the lines of, the lines driving these systems into conflict are already there. There's no walking it back, and we just need to fucking win. And that's really the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard what you've said, and I think, Hensley, that from my perspective, I've been on both sides of the aisle, right? I've been on both sides of the coin. I was a Trump voter at a certain point, right? And
Right.
the fact of the matter is, I don't look at people as anything other than the context of the conversation that I'm in with them at the time. And most often, people demonstrate they have no idea what the fuck is going on. They demonstrate they don't have an understanding of the Constitution or what is in it. They demonstrate that they don't have an understanding of U.S. Code, Title 10, Title 50, Title 32, Title 22, the shit that gives us the ability to operate in the United States, overseas, the difference between authorities and permissions, right?
Right.
These are all things that I start talking to somebody, right, and they start showing their ass to me, right, in the sense of the fact that you have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Then, I do try to take the approach of, well, then I just thought you have to kind of lead them to water with questions. Well, what is your understanding of this? And really, for me, I think that the problem here, and it was so brilliantly put recently, I think it was a billionaire that said, most people are using AI so they don't have to learn anything. But the really successful people are using it so they can learn everything, right? And I think that's a fucking fundamental difference, right?
Brilliant.
There's not enough meta-analysis going on in people's brains, right? There's just not, right? Like, it is a deeply frustrating thing, but I think if you do some meta-analysis and you ask yourself the question, and this is where I think we really need to be better as a society, stop teaching people what to think and start teaching them fucking how to do it, right? That's the only way that you cut through the noise that Katie's talking about, that you're talking about, where we have, these alternate facts, you can make a statistic look like anything. You've heard people say shit like that. But only to fucking people who don't think critically, right? We run around and we repeat these types of things because we've heard it and we have the internal, but we never have the meta-analysis where we ask the fucking question, is this even fucking true? And I think that's what we need more of.
I recognize that certainly in this audience, we are going to be opposed to how we feel about this administration. However, I have a pretty balanced media diet and I absorb it all. And I don't look at it, this is kind of embarrassing to say. I don't even really look at it like we're special. I look at it like we are a group of things that figure out a way to communicate with one another on a rock hurling through space. We have patterns, and we have conditions, and we have geography, and all these other external things that kind of affect the way that we are. Also, it's based off, the way that we think and perceive things is based off lived experience, input, output, and all those things. The variations of that are astronomical. Carl and I were in the same unit together. And, Carl could say, dude, that was the worst chain of command I've ever been with. And I could say, man, that was the best chain of command I've ever been with. And neither of us would be wrong. And when we talk about things that like, listen, you don't understand, this is a fact, this is this or this is that, especially when we talk about, and Katie, you are absolutely spot on. The media is a cheerleading bench. And Carl, you talked about the angles of the videos and the precision of videos, and I don't want to readdress that. But again, you can see things and have a different perception from them. And that goes for everything. That goes for everything. Let me ask you this. What's the best fucking ice cream? Right. Because Carl's going to have a best ice cream. Katie's going to have a best ice cream. Brian's going to have a best ice cream. Roy's going to have a best ice cream. Mayhem is going to have a best ice cream. But I'm going to be right about the best ice cream from my perspective.
I do want to say something, just one sentence. Yes, we can have different perspectives on a lot of things, right? Like a lot of things in life. I can agree to disagree, but basic human decency and human rights are not one. That's not something I will agree to disagree with anybody on. It's not. And as veterans, we should not. And we should hold those people accountable that do not believe in human rights or human dignity.
Yeah, so I mean that's for me that's the number one thing is that I draw the line at human rights, right? And when it comes to human rights, there is no two sides of the coin when it comes to human rights. There is you're violating human rights or you're not violating human rights. And so like that's the way that it goes. And I go back to my belief in people is that I do not want to believe that you're someone that believes in the violation of human rights, because in my mind, if we were to put you or your family in that situation, you would be upset about the situation that you're in. And it would be something that you would be deploring, but yet because it doesn't apply to you, it's okay. So again, that's where my perspective lies is, does it violate human rights or does it not human rights? And then in addition to that, Nick, you brought up the fact that you watch left and right and you've got you pull from all these different sources. But my question is, when was the last time you watched the Senate floor? When was the last time you watched a Senate or a House committee hearing? Because those are the things that I watch, right? And I do that because for me, the way that I look at it is the media has traditionally been biased. I mean, it's been biased. You go all the way back, and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists had their own newspapers. And so
you can go back to the origin of newspapers.
I don't watch, right. But my point here is that if you're not taking your information and your data from the horse's mouth, right, then you're going to always have that tinge. And if you are someone who leans to the right and you're watching a mixture of both right and left leaning news media, you're going to tend to trend towards believing in what the right is saying and dismissing what the left is saying, right? I got into this huge discussion on the Book of Faces about how Democrats had offered and put up over 6 times this past week on the Senate floor bills to open up the TSA, to get the TSA paid, and to get everything in DHS funded except for ICE and CBP. And I got a response of, no, that's a lie. That's false news. That's fake information. You don't know what you're talking about. But I'm sitting here saying, I watched it happen. Right? And so that's the thing that we have to get through is not only just media literacy, but the American people got to know where the actual information is. And they have to know whether or not the information they're being fed by the media is going to be biased in one way or another.
Yeah, Carl, I agree with you. And Nick, I guess the thing I wanted to say here is, you brought up the ice cream thing, and I'll always return to this is one of my biggest motherfucking pet peeves on the earth is when people are like, "That's your opinion." Ice cream is a great example of an opinion. Okay, whether or not a bill was introduced to the floor is not right, and people struggle for whatever fucking reason to make the determining difference between the two. I witness it all the time. Well, it's just your opinion. That's your opinion. This is my opinion. It's a stupid. I find it to be a cop out dumb people use often. Okay, that's me. Now, I would also say that I don't make any assumptions about you, Hensley. In fact, talking to somebody like, look at this conversation. What I take from this conversation is that you're a thoughtful person who may have some differing views, but you haven't said anything that I thought, okay, this dude's a fucking moron, right? And so we're inevitably going to have a different experience in a conversation when it's two people that are like that, or a group of people that is like that. But when I'm watching some of these roundtables with just outright fucking fascists saying, yeah, I don't care about the Constitution, right? Like, we're not going to have a good conversation. And you're goddamn right. I'm going to have a fucking low opinion of you because you're saying stupid ass, objectively not okay shit, right? Now, yeah, is there somebody out there that thinks that fascism is cool? Fuck yeah, there is, for sure. And I don't want them in this country. It's me personally. And so, I always default to when we can sit here and have these conversations and share differing views, but nothing's gone off the rails here. And it never does with these folks. And I find that people who are well informed, it's pretty obvious pretty fast. Right. And frankly, and this is the last thing I'll say, I'll wrap it here. Carl, you talk about like looking at the Senate floor, right? I spent probably 8 to 10 hours a day for the first 5 months of 2025 reading every single piece of legislation that they introduced in both the House and the Senate and grading it. A lot of that stuff you can find on my Substack. One of the very first ones I did was the SAVE Act. We talked about it the other night. And now I'm building an app that will scrape both at the federal level and also down at the state level so that people can start seeing what's in these bills. And it's not just about understanding what's in the bills. It's also, I take a different view. So you guys already know I'm money out of politics guy. And so one of the things that I started looking at is how much upward transfer of wealth these bills were creating, okay? And just in those 5 months, it was more than $10 trillion taken from the fucking middle class and given to the fucking elites. That's not information you're going to find in any news outlet. It's not something you're going to find unless you do the painstaking work of actually evaluating every single piece of shit legislation that comes across that floor and then identifying that that's a metric that you want to understand. Because then it sheds light on just how bad Congress is. So anyway, it takes a lot of time is the overarching point there.
Nicholas, I'm sure you saw how we wrap up. So we're going to start to wrap up because it is No Kings coming up. We are 6 days away from No Kings 3. It is on the 28th. Please find your No Kings in your area. We have a call to action to veterans to find their No Kings. And if you don't have a veteran group in that area, it is now time to form one. So find that location, form a strip map, and then start posting in it. You can post it in our group. I'm sure Money Out of Politics will repost it for you. Veteran groups across the country are doing this, Common Defense, a lot of them. If you are a veteran going to No Kings, this is your call to action. It is time to gather the veterans around you and start making moves. So do a strip map, start posting it. We'll post it, send it all over. Other things, I will go around the room and let everybody kind of hype up what they're doing, where their specific No Kings is for anybody watching, and then we will close out in the way we always do. Rory.
Fayetteville, North Carolina's No Kings. We're gonna have a food drive.
Yep, food drive for 2 local food banks. Our event starts at 10 a.m. in downtown Fayetteville, North Carolina. We do also have our Raleigh, North Carolina event starting at 1 o'clock, I believe, and that's at the state capitol.
Rory sounded really weird then. I have a terrible memory. Sorry.
That's why we have good caretakers.
Big facts.
Brian.
All right, so No Kings Boston. It's going to be a banger. We're going to have Dropkick Murphys play at our event, which is going to be super cool.
My brother will be there.
You can find me on mass5051.substack.com. We got a Substack there. I'm a regular writer for it, and I'm doing a periodical now. I'm writing every week. My most recent article is Pathways to Power, and it's about No Kings and sort of my motivation personally for doing this. So I write a lot of like inspirational stuff and history stuff, little philosophy in there, try to give the movement some intellectual ballast where we can. And yeah, that's all I got.
Founder of Money Out of Politics and, co-founder. And also, if you guys want to tune in, I'm also a co-host of Disorderly Conduct. The podcast available on Apple Music and Spotify and all your fun stuff there. I will be at No Kings here in Raleigh, and there is a Durham sign making event for anybody who happens to be local on Thursday. I believe, what is it, High
Wire Brewing. It is with Lindsay Knapp and Common Defense. Yep. I will hype that event up in the chats as well.
Dope. Yeah, I'll be there Thursday. I'm making my fucking badass French sign. There's also, by the way, important feature of it, and I've rendered it, so I'm gonna drop it for you guys real quick. I'll show you, because I made the shirt a long time ago, and I just made the decision to bring it back out, but somebody else can go find the shirt.
I will buy that shirt.
As someone from French heritage, I'm here for it. I know a thing or two about the guillotine because I've seen a thing or two about the guillotine.
I think that was actually my first sign at 5051 was a French Revolution reference. I do want to give a special thank you to Carl and Crayon Box Politics for partnering with 5051 Vets to do the smoke pit, and for Mayhem for always committing, and Brian and Rory and Nick. You are always welcome. Please come back. We'll continue having conversations.
I loved it.
Just so everybody watching, this was the premise, was this right here, having veterans of differing ideological beliefs, having conversations and trying to meet in the middle. Carl, so please introduce yourself, your podcast, and I can't wait to listen to your podcast that you're doing this week.
Yeah, so I'm Carl Abel. I'm the founder and CEO of Cranbox Politics. We're currently in the process of working on an app as well called The Archivist. Hopefully I'm going to be doing a little collaboration with Mayhem and Money Out of Politics to get some of those ideas factored into the app and make it a really good, hard-hitting product. I do a weekly interview podcast called Cranbox Weekly Interview Edition. And this upcoming week on Tuesday, I'll be doing a sit-down recorded interview with a former Trump attorney, which hopefully that will get released sometime around, if not this Friday, next Friday, so it'll be out there. But I also do a live show every Sunday at 3 p.m. I am extremely happy that I was able to get Cranbox Politics and 5051 Veterans to partner, because I think that this is a partnership that is going to grow and develop from here, because we as veterans have a voice, and we as veterans have experience. And when we use that voice and we use that experience to talk to the American people, and even just amongst ourselves, and let the American people watch us talk to one another, I think that allows us to set the example for the rest of the nation as far as how do we move forward from these fraught times. So
100%.
I do also want to segue off of that. Coming up in April, between 5051 Veterans and Common Defense and the Fayetteville Resistance Coalition and Carl and his little brainchild, we will be having a Veterans Town Hall here in Fayetteville.
Also, thank you for helping us, Carl.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for it.
So for Jacksonville, because I am in Jacksonville, Florida, we have a lot going on. There is a continued immigration fight going on here for an immigrant by the name of Gabby. I have been heavily involved in the past week with sustained actions for her husband. All we are asking for is a habeas. If you see the video on our TikTok, it is of the Baker County facility. His wife sent us the video, so please just repost it to make the conditions known. Also for No Kings, Jacksonville is the largest land city in the U.S., so there's multiple fucking events here. Do I know them all? Nope. Please look on nokings.org. There's 7. They're all over the city. The main one is in downtown Jacksonville. It will be led by yours truly and veterans. We will step off at 1:15, followed by a rally. We are marching over the Main Street Bridge into downtown, finishing at the courthouse. And we are also planning a town hall after Carl does his. After we see how that one goes here in Jacksonville, we are going to do one based off theirs. But St. Johns County, 5051 and Indivisible, and their St. Johns County Democrat Party is doing their own veteran town hall, and 5051 Vets has been asked to be a panelist. So when I get a date on that, I will everybody know. So yeah, the way we close out for everybody watching that has never seen what is about to happen, it's completely normal. We're veterans, so we do a safety brief at the end of these. A safety brief happens every close of business on Fridays. It's normally given by your leaders, either your first sergeant commander. It kind of depends on what's going on for the week. And it reminds us how not to be degenerates. So we just kind of go through the same things. And so we start the same way. Do not beat your spouse, your child, or your pet. Don't add to the population or subtract from the population unless you intend to and you have a plan. Don't end up in the hospital or in jail. If it seems like a good idea at 2 a.m., it's not. Go to sleep. Drink responsibly, and if you can't do that, at least drink accountably. Know your limit and stop well before you start texting your ex. If you wake up and you don't know where you are, that's a problem. Should probably get that checked out. If you do drink, do not drive. And if you cannot afford an Uber, hit up our page. We'll pay for it. And if your driver of that Uber says, watch this, immediately exit that vehicle. Whatever's about to happen is not great. Hydrate like your life depends on it, because it does. Your action's not a life. Like your life is not an action movie. Act accordingly.
It depends on who you are.
That is true. If it involves Katie Lord, maybe. If it involves fire, explosives, or I saw this on YouTube,
Do it safely.
but video it and send it to us. We'd love to see it.
Have water on standby.
Don't pet anything that can eat you. Nothing online is temporary. Yeah, even the app that says it deletes things. Don't go viral for all the wrong reasons. If someone says they got a good deal for you, it's probably stolen.
And if you do go viral for the wrong reason, make it a good story.
Yeah, tag us in that shit. We'll bring it up in the smoke pit.
Leash your dogs.
That is true. If it sounds too good to be true, it absolutely is. Take care of your people, though, and if your friend is about to do something truly stupid, stop them before they ruin their life. That's accountability. And if you are the friend doing something stupid, listen to the other guy.
Reach out before you crash out.
I'm not there yet. I made a list this time so I wouldn't fuck up.
Whoop.
Nobody gets left behind, especially at an action. If you plan on doing spicy shit, have a plan, a lawyer, bail money, and friends to execute the plan with, in that order. Make good decisions, and if you can't, make survivable ones. If you need help, call us. I'd rather be woken up than come get you out of jail. Be where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, in the condition you're supposed to be there. Do not buy animals from the dark web and then try to donate them to the zoo. Pete the penguin, we love you. Do not attempt to ride, fight, or befriend the wildlife. Do not conduct live fire exercises in housing developments. Do not go whitewater rafting in storm ditches. Don't fight anyone with fewer teeth than you. They obviously have more experience. If someone says I've done this before while doing something super sketchy, it should concern you, not reassure you. If you meet them after midnight, wait 24 hours before making life-changing decisions.
Are they gremlins? What?
Throw water on them just to be sure. Oh my god. And if you do that, like, please also video that. Like, reach out before you crash out. Go out and touch grass, especially if you're in the activism community. We've been going hard in the paint for a year now. This group has existed over a year. And so get out, touch grass, spend time with people that you care about. It doesn't have to be your family, but you should probably fucking like them. At least a smidge. Make all of your mental health appointments and take all of your medicine. The ruling didn't go through, so don't stop taking your medicine. Take all of them. Make sure you're eating balanced meals. And most importantly, and it's our finish out, we all took an oath to the Constitution and to the people around us. That means when we are out as veterans in the streets at actions, in courthouses, doing whatever we're doing to try and save this country, it means that you are supposed to take action to protect the most vulnerable around you, right? And so that means that we're all head on a swivel, looking around, making sure that we are cognizant and we are aware. On the mental health note, though, Please take it seriously. I know veterans are like, we have conversations all the time about mental health. Veterans are struggling. Please reach out. I know that we have a lot going on. We're tired of burying 22 a day. So please reach out. Anybody on this call, including Nicholas, I know he's brand new. He would rather you reach out than us have to go to a funeral of another soldier that we know.